Hi once again to all my friends of Live a Home SG. And since you're watching my video right now, you know that it's time to learn something new. So today's topic is going to be very interesting again because on the ground, I have a lot of clients actually also very confused whether with the new GLS that is released and also the potential of cooling measure to be lifted like the 15 months cooling period. And then there's also SSD that is introduced in July. With so many things that's coming out for the next few months, it seems like our market is going to see a major shift. And not to even forget the interest rate that is coming up in September, which will probably cause another big demand in the markets for those who are waiting for the time to enter. So if you're one of the buyers who's thinking of finding that right opportunity to enter into the markets, I'm very sure you are also equally confused with what is actually what. At the same time, interest rates are coming down. It seems like it's a good time to buy. So let's dive deeper into the topic today and understand better for yourself what is the market going to become in the next 3 months ahead, and then you decide if it's actually a right time to enter or not. As usual, the disclaimer is to share with you that all the research and analysis is based on my own findings, and if there's anything that you're not clear, feel free to reach out and I will be more than happy to help you along the way. Now, a few key questions as you're thinking about just the every other buyers out there is, with the new SSD that's introduced just 1.5 months ago, what is the actual real reason behind it? Is our government trying to signal or hint us that there might be a big shift in the market soon? Or if you're thinking of planning for your next move, with the consideration that you have to now hold for 4 years, does it mean that you have higher cost of holding to result in lesser gains? Also, should you actually be thinking of upgrading now? Or should you wait a bit more so that you don't feel that you're impulsive? And next big question you'll be asking yourself is, should I go for a new launch or should I go for a resale? What does it actually mean for you? And lastly, there's also plenty of supply in the market right now. What kind of property should you be looking out for if you are thinking of going into the market at this point of time? With the recent news in the market, you can see that it's all flooding. There's a lot of take-up rate for the upcoming launches. You have River Green, you have Linden, you have Promenade Peak, and even in the Straits Times, it says that buyers are taking out over 900 units at 3 new launches over the weekend, which is really crazy because even I as a buyer or even I as an agent, I sometimes get a bit overwhelmed or FOMO by the amount of take-up from many of the consumers out there. It didn't stop. In fact, previously there was also Linden Woods, which was sold at 94%, and also we have this upper house at Orchard Boulevard, and also this Robertson Opus, which was sold at 41% for an average price of 3,360 per square feet. So why is it that these buyers are all so motivated? Next moment, you also realize our government talks about higher stamp duty in July, and immediately next month onwards, they say, oh, I'm going to introduce more supply, 25,000 private units to be launched through GLS. So we are having a lot of mixed signals, and then even like BTO going to increase supply by 10% more, which is 55,000 concurrently. So the question, what is actually causing the strong demand despite the measures in seller stamp duty? If you take a look at a very clear reality, there's one thing that will never stop, which is our population increase. And we all know that our government's direction is to increase the population to 2.5 million by 2030. With this very clear direction that our government wanted, you can also see the direct relation between population and property prices. Since 2010 all the way to 2024, you may realize that our property prices has ongoing been increasing. So alongside with the increasing of population as well, this is also one key factor to share with you, a major thing that why our prices keep going up. But if you break it down into a more acceptable number, a lot of families have shrunk in terms of family size. I can also say gone are the days that families have 3 to 4 to even up to 5 kids. Most of us with kids, we are only looking at 1 or maybe maximum 2. So let's assume generally most of the household size is kept at around 3. The number of houses needed for the increasing population will amount to 24,000 units. But if you look at the total of TOP and MOP supply in the year 2025, it only amounts to 13,000. That having said, there is still a shortfall of 11,000 in the year 2025 itself. And I'm not even including the upcoming years ahead because we know that if our government don't do anything to this undersupply situation, our property prices will likely experience another big shift in terms of upwards trend. you may start also realizing that a lot of people are saying that property prices is seemingly becoming out of reach, but yet the response and take-up rate are still so buoyant. Let's take a look at the population count in terms of Singaporean versus PR. For Singaporean, it actually holds a total of 86% of the total population of 6.036 million in Singapore. And for PR, actually it's only 14%. I've heard clients telling me that the reason why our property market is going up so much is because a lot of PRs are coming in, a lot of employment pass and etc. etc. That's why it causes the rental to spike. That's why it causes the demand to increase so much in our property prices. But after looking at these numbers, it's very clear to us that the real buyers out there, most of them are Singaporeans. That having said, our Singaporean is actually the biggest market share in Singapore's property. So it's not our PRs who is driving our market up, but rather Singaporeans itself. So since now that we know Singaporeans hold 86% of the entire population counts in Singapore, and we also know that they are the major purchasers in Singapore driving the property market up, we want to also identify that there's a total of 63% working class. With the 63% working class, you now can have a clearer picture on how much are they earning every month. From here, the total household income per year, you can realize that most of them are at 20,000 and over. That means most of the household with a combined income of more than 20,000 and over is sitting at 16.1%. This will definitely explain why our property market is very hard to come down because of higher income status. So with the increasing Singapore population and higher income, do you think we are in an over or under supply state? The answer is for you to think about as I go on. Next, we are going to understand better, are we really facing an over or under supply as per the question I asked you before this? If you take a look at this, you can realize that actually in the year 2025, the amount of TOP units that are actually released in the market is around 5,348. That means that as of now, we are actually seeing 5,300 over TOP supply being released in the market. So when has supply started to taper down? Since 2023, as you may see from here. In the year 2023, we have the most supply in the market, and that is also the reason why during that year we have Normanton Park, Florence, and a few other like Park Clementi's, and all these big developments are all taking keys at around the same time, resulting in plenty of units and options in the market. Even that, our government also has identified that during this year is the year of heavier supply. That's why for the next consecutive few years, they were really careful about the TOP units and key collections. So how do they plan this is whenever they decide to introduce more supply in the market, they will look at the upcoming TOP units in the next few years ahead before they decide to implement new GLS. I need you to make sense of this because if not, we will always be looking at a very general picture. Oh, I see a lot of land bids. Next time Singapore will have a lot of property. But it's actually not, because everything is quite well planned if you take a look at this alone. With a lot of supply in 2023, in the next few years down the road, which is 2024, 2025, and even 2026, we are experiencing a very controlled supply situation. Which means if now you're looking at resale properties in the market, you may not find as many pages as you would on Property Guru as you could find in the year 2023. But when is the time that you start realizing the TOP supply starts coming in? Will be from the year 2027. So the ideology behind it is that as our government starts to reduce in the amount of TOP units key collection, you can also see that they are introducing GLS over here because they foresee that there will be construction period that will take at least around 3 years and onwards. So therefore, the cycle will always be introducing land bids and then introducing more GLSs so that in the next few years they can count how many TOP units, and they will always be weighing this out before they decide to introduce more or introduce lesser. With that, this is also a chart to share with you what kind of home prices versus pipeline supply. These are all the new sales, which means these are not the TOP units. If you take a look at 2022 to 2024, the total number of units including EC, sold and unsold new sales, are sitting at around 62,000, 55,000 and 54,000. This is for 2022, 2023 and 2024. This chart is as of accurate until Q2 of 2025. Now, if you take a look at first half of 2025, we have about 56,000 of units in the market for new sales, including ECs and stuff. But if you see the second half of 2025 for GLS, there's only 4,725. That having said, the following year, which is in the year 2026 onwards, you may actually start seeing that the amount of GLS introduced may be even more controlled. Why? Because if you see a combination of second half of 2025, there's a total of 61,000 units introduced. So if you combine all the numbers over here, actually is about the same, 50 over 1,000 to 60 over 1,000. So when's the time that you are actually seeing a lot of supply in the market? Was in the year 2013 and 2014. During that year, you can see that the supply is at 109,000 and 93,000. After these 2 years of massive supply introduction, the market has all along been kept at 50 over 1,000 to 60 over 1,000 of units. This means that throughout this year, since the year 2016 until now, there has never been a situation of over or under supply because it's actually quite well planned and well balanced. So you may say, oh, how come in 2013 and 2014 our government introduced so much supply? During that time, our government is also trying to understand how to work around the markets and decide in terms of increasing population and birth rates before they start to regulate the amount of supply to be introduced in the market. So we are sitting at a very controlled market situation now, and the odds of having oversupply is low. If you take reference to this chart to give you a better understanding, in the year 2013 to 2014, these are the years that have a lot of supply, and thereafter it's been quite low. So to take reference into how it affects the markets, you can see that this chart is to share with you an overview of property markets in the new launch, which is the blue line, and the resale market, which is the pink line. You may have also realized in 2019 to 2021 are the year that has quite low supply at that time. You can see that the demand for homes are high. So key thing is that whenever supply is low, demand is high. When demand is high, it is inevitable that you see a property price correction of uptrend. So from 2019, when supply was quite low, it was sitting at about 1,654 per square feet. But shortly after, once it reaches 2022, the supply, because it's quite low, has already gone up in per square feet to 2,003. This is a 40% increase from where it was at 2022. So quite concerning, because at that time, a lot of people were already struggling. Is it really the peak of property market already or not? Crossing 2,000 to 2,003 is already very scary for most people. But yet, our government still step in and try to regulate the market by introducing more supply, which is here. And that's the time you start to see that actually it seems to have some correction already. So same thing, when supply is low, demand is high, there will be a situation where there will be an upwards trend deeply. But when supply is a bit more and demand is a bit more regulated, you can still see that overall property prices still inch up, but in a slower and more steadily manner. So you have to think for yourself whether do you want to enter the market when the demand is high and supply is low, or you want to enter the market when it seems that our government is trying to introduce more supply in the market and that the demand is more regulated. As much as we know that no matter how government try to regulate the market by introducing more supply so that it can regulate the demand, it is also inevitable to control the fact that our people are more stronger in their income, and their people are also more motivated to buy right now, especially in the new launches, because they are also more and more educated towards the cost of holding and the potential gains that they are able to get. To end off this part, I want you to remember that every cycle's peak is always higher than the previous cycle's peak. So this means that when you want to decide to wait to buy, are you ready to buy at the new price point each time? So this chart is also to share with you the opportunity that you really have to take a look. Because in the year 2014 to 2024, for the past 10 years, property supply has been kept rather low. Since we know that property supply has been kept rather low, you can also notice that it's still an overall uptrend regardless if it's a CCR, RCR or OCR. That means that today, no matter if you're thinking of buying CCR, RCR or OCR, you can actually start seeing that the prices started to show some fluctuations now. So that means that with the introducing of 50 to 60 over 1,000 units for the past few years, the prices fluctuation is a good indicator to share with you that if today you are looking at an opportunity to enter, this could be something that you can really think about before we enter into the new price range coming 2026. How about the resale market? For resale market, you can also see that with the hype in launches, it spills over in terms of the demand. I have plenty of buyers out there who have been waiting for a queue number, trying to see the queue number, whether they have a chance to strike lottery, to get a good queue, to get a good unit. But eventually, when they try for a few times, they realize they couldn't get it. Then they have no choice but to spill over to the resale market. That is the reason why, with the recent hype in launches, the rest of the resale market has also been going through a very healthy gain. So some of my clients also will ask me, in that case, does it make sense for me to buy a resale? Because in any case, it still goes up. So that is also something you want to think about. I'm not saying that you should only buy new launches. But if you're buying a resale, you also want to ask yourself, at what point are you entering and what age are you buying into to make a more sound decision? Like, for example, will there still be growth? Will there still be exit strategy? What is your total cost of holding? You got to break them down to decide if you want to go for resale or not. And back to the current inventory, maybe you will not have known that currently we are really experiencing a low inventory state, which means that our current unsold supply as of Q2 2025 is only sitting at 18,000. That means if our government sit on it and don't do any new launches, don't introduce any GLS, our annual take-up rate for CCR will only take 6.5 years to finish up everything. And if you look at RCR and OCR, it's only 1 year plus to finish all the stocks. That means that if our government don't step in to introduce more GLS, the resale market will experience an extremely huge hype in demand due to the seriously low supply now. So that is also the reason why they introduced seller stamp duty first, and the following month, then they let you know that, I'm going to introduce more supply. Because they really want to prevent people who are in the market to speculate, thinking of flipping. They really want people to think about holding property on a longer term so that they can benefit more in terms of their gain and reduce all the flipping to have more certainty for people who owns a property like us. Since you are still here with me, do you actually know how many private transactions were there in 2024? It is actually estimated that there's almost 21,000 or almost close to 22,000 units sold in the year 2024. Earlier, I mentioned to you that there's a need for around 24,000 per year. Given the family sizes that has shrunk, now it's about 3 per household, we need around 24,000. And yet, we are still seeing units taken off the shelf readily now. I also want to share with you that most of the people, whenever they hear a cooling measure like a seller stamp duty or increasing of foreigner tax and stuff, the first thing they share is that, our government is trying to cool down the market. But actually, after this video, I hope we take a different approach to cooling measure, because the reason why the cooling measure is here is actually to regulate the market now and the upcoming few years ahead. And you may even be surprised that even though there's cooling measure like a 15 months wait out period or seller stamp duty or ABSD, our market has not actually seen much signs of slowing down. Let me take for an example. In the year 2017, when our government realized, market is a bit more stable here, they relaxed the seller stamp duty. They then realized that property market went up straight by a 3.4%. And then they got a bit worried that has it gone up so much that maybe they need to step in and regulate it again. Then next moment, in the year 2018, they introduced another increase of ABSD. So this time round, property market starts to see a slower growth. And eventually, in the year 2021, they increased ABSD again because they start seeing that there's actually a steep growth over here. By doing so, this is to share with you that whenever a cooling measure is around, there might be a bit of impact to slow down the growth, but the impact is not long. That's the reason why whenever seller stamp duty or other cooling measures are introduced, it's more or less to regulate the market for this short period, and very quickly, our market will rebound. Same thing for new launches. After they relaxed the seller stamp duty, the property prices actually shot up by 21%. And thereafter, with the increase of ABSD in the intervals, property market still went up by a fair bit. So new launches actually seen much more gains within a shorter time. And for resale, it's actually a ripple effect of the gains. So pick the type of property you want to buy and manage your expectation. So this is to share with you that for URA residential price versus seller stamp duty revision, you can also notice that in the year 2010 to the year 2011, our government is introducing seller stamp duty, and that was a year that they were also trying to figure out what kind of cooling measure works. They're also trying to introduce regulations so that our property market will not crash like Lehman Brothers crisis. After introducing seller stamp duty, our property market still went up by 22%. And then the only time it starts to come down is the TDSR measure in the year 2013 all the way to the year 2016. Moving forward, when they introduced seller stamp duty number 4, the property market still gone up by 11%. So I have to also share that seller stamp duty, although seems like 4 years holding period, an additional year of interest, an additional year of holding, it still shows that the property market will still continually go up. That means as along with your cost of holding increasing, you can also realize the amount of gains you are getting. Longer holding may also benefit you in the long run. So take for instance, in the year 2024, these are the sub-sale sellers who hold 4 years and above since 2017 all the way to 2025. They have already seen themselves having more gains generally as compared to people who sold faster, like less than 3 years or between 3 to 4 years. And it's more apparent towards the later years in 2024 and 2025 that for those people who sold at above 4 years, they have seen 21.8% and 22.1% as compared to their neighbors who sold with 20 or even as low as 17% in the 3rd to 4th years of sale. And if you look at resale sellers who have purchased property and sold after 4 years, they also generally enjoy a 29% of gain on average. That having said, if you take a look at those who sold below 3 years, they only gain about 17 or even up to 18%. And for those who hold between 3 to 4 years, they have seen themselves having 20 over percent, which has surpassed their neighbors as well. And moving forward, you can also see those people who hold longer, like 4 to 10 years, they've seen 28% or even up to 30% of gain. And those of them who hold more than 10 years, absolutely they have already seen like 60% of gains on general. So why is it important for you to know this? Because if you are thinking of buying a new launch, holding it for a few years, it could be ideal to aim for 4 years to 5 years to sell. Conversely, if you are thinking of buying a resale, it seems like it's better to hold a resale for above 5 years in order to enjoy more gains. So yes, there might be interest rates or maintenance fee and property tax incurred, but at the rate of property prices going up in this manner, I'm still confident that they are able to cover your costs and allow you to see even more gains. So in summary, by increasing population and increasing income status, plus now we understand that it's low inventory, we are going to officially enter into a situation where interest rates are going to have another round of revision in September. With the revision in September, what is actually going to become for the markets in the next 3 to 6 months? So all of you who are watching this video, I want you to take a look at this chart because this is the chart that excites me to sell my house and buy another 2 more after. With this, most of us are now very, very aware that this is definitely a motivation for most of the buyers out there. Since we know that these lowered interest rates have been a motivation for most buyers out there, how do you interpret the property prices then? Do you think the property prices will go up? Or do you think property prices will come down? Think about it. We also know that fixed interest rates have been dropping since the past few years, from 2023, 2024, all the way till now. Now we also know that in September, our Feds are going to more or less confirm to reduce the interest rates since it's already in the news. The question to ask yourself is, should you actually wait for interest rate to drop before you take action? Because it's very soon, it's in September. If it's going to be in September and you're still waiting for interest rate to drop, I'd like you to think deeper. Why? Because in the years 2008, after markets recovery all the way to 2017, you can realize that interest rates were kept low, and that is also a great significant jump for property prices to go straight up to 86. It's a very big recovery from where it were before that because of what has happened during the economy crisis. And thereafter, interest rate has to come back up again to kind of regulate the overall market, and that's also the time you can see that property prices still inched up but slower. And then shortly after, interest rate came down again, and that's also the time when COVID hits. And at that time, because of low supply, because of low interest rates, and because buyers, they cannot travel, they start to think about their future and everything, all of them were coming in to buy at the same time, and property prices actually shot up by 54%. Of course, during that time, there was also quite a fair bit of buyers who were very concerned about job stability and stuff. But majority of people who bought property during COVID, I'm very sure you have friends around you who did that. You could have also seen that they have seen a handsome gain of 300 to 600 to even up to 1 million during that holding period. Now, in the year 2021 all the way to 2023, we are experiencing regulated interest rates again. Interest rate has gone up, and you start to see that property prices are coming down. But is it going to be short-lived? The answer is yes, because now you are seeing interest rates coming down again, and in fact, it will go down even more. With that, how do you think the market will become over here? Do you think market will go down, or do you think market will go up? And if you are waiting for the right time to buy, should you wait when everyone else is buying, knowing that the odds of market going up is high? Or should you be the one to enter now as an early mover to enjoy the gains you could have made during COVID but you couldn't? So this could be an opportunity for you. Let's take a look at 3-room at Whistler Grand. For 3-room at Whistler Grand, there are actually two groups of buyers. One when they bought during this time, which is over here when interest rates were low. And then after that, there's also another group of buyers when they purchased at 2020 when interest rates were higher. So at that time, you realize that when interest rates were low, people were buying. This was what they could see their property gaining. From 2019 to 2020, property prices were going at about 140,000. And after 2020 to 2022, when interest rates were up, actually you start to see a dip in the prices, and next moment it actually shot up again. So for those who actually choose to buy over here or even over here, they can see themselves having a gain of 140,000, and the next moment they can have an additional gain of 217,000. That means that actually a lot of people, we want to buy when everyone else is buying, just because it seems like a more stable market to buy. But I want you to think deeper. Why? Because if you're buying when everyone else is concerned and fearful to buy, you may be able to see the next jump to enjoy the biggest gain overall. So take your pick and choose your battle, because sometimes you also want to take note that it doesn't mean everyone else buying is safe. So are you an opportunist, or are you someone who is more FOMO? This example of Florence residents during the year 2019 during COVID, and a lot of people also unsure because interest rate were going up at that time. The people who bought at that time, they entered at 1.389, and immediately in 3 years later, the next buyer who had to buy because of low inventory and there's not much supply in the market, options and everything, and at that time interest rate were low, everybody was starting to buy something. They have no choice but to buy with a 291,000 difference, resulting in a same stack but at 1.68 million. So who's the biggest winner at this point of time? The one who entered at 1.389, isn't it? That's the reason why I would like you to really think through carefully. If you were that lucky buyer who managed to buy this, just by identifying buyer's buying signal, will you be able to be the one to gain the 291,000? I hope the person is you. In summary, I do want us to wrap up today's sharing with the increasing population of 6.5 million and interest rates that are coming down with the likelihood of low inventory. The property prices will likely be coming up because it's very hard for the market to regulate itself unless our government comes up with some cooling measure. And that's the reason why SSD is here to stay, because it's here to regulate the market. If you remember during the launch of Seneca Residences, during that time, people were a bit appalled by the per square feet transactions crossing 2,000 and stuff. And actually, Seneca only sells 60% of units during launch day. Next moment, Woodlands actually start introducing that, they are going to launch a site over there and their per plot ratio is 904 PSF. This means that if they are going to bid it at 904 PSF per plot ratio, they are going to sell at around 1,009 to up to 2,001. And a lot of us are also questioning for Woodlands, can it really be sold at 2,000 per square feet? But the turnout rate was fantastic. It was sold at 84% on the first launch. And that's also the reason why Lentor Hills, previously 1,008 per square feet, has gone up to 2,000 to 2,001 per square feet immediately after Woodlands was launched. With that, Woodlands has set a new benchmark that OCR is going to cross 2,000 per square feet, and people are ready to buy because the response shows that it's 84% sold. Now, I'd like to ask you, if now you look at this news, you know that Xinghai has already beat the Bayshore plot at 1,388 per square feet per plot ratio. How much do you think they will be selling? For 904 PSF, for Woodlands, it's sold at 2,000 per square feet average. And if now it's 1,388 per square feet, do you think it will be likely crossing 2,007 per square feet as well? And we're speaking about District 15 being 2,007 per square feet, something that you will never be able to experience 1 year ago. And this is going to be the truth, which means that moving forward, we are going to see resale markets even at seaside residences already transacting at 2,005 to 2,006 per square feet. I wouldn't be surprised if Bayshore is sold at 2,007 per square feet, with Chuang Grove even having 1,376 PSF per plot ratio. They also eventually will be selling at 2,005 to 2,006 per square feet. So be ready for the new market. Accept that upcoming market 2007 onwards for RCR plot is really the new norm, and OCR is going to cross around 2,000 to 2,003 per square feet. Recently, there's a Springleaf that was launched also crossing 2,000 as well. Upcoming next year, we are going to see Dunman Road crossing 2,008 per square feet, and Bayshore, as I mentioned, eventually 2,008 per square feet or even up to 3,000. And for Zion and even for the central area, they will also be crossing 2,007 up to 3,000 to 3,002. So at which point do you then decide to enter? I leave the decision to you, because all of us will always have hesitation where we are entering a multi-million purchase. But if you are able to see the projected prices for next year, I'm sure by now you will be clearer on what to do with your property, because by understanding land costs, it will then allow you to anticipate and make better decisions. With that, here's the good news. We know that our government is going to introduce better URA master plan for the upcoming years ahead, with new areas like Dover, Newton and Orchard expanding and becoming better, with our economy, GDP going to increase, already increased, and also our investments doing well. It's likelihood that our property market will also continually go up. But it is also important to be cautious when you plan for your property, because I'm also starting to hear recession coming and stuff like that. So because now there's market uncertainty, there's mixed signals, which is also an opportunity for you, because with mixed signals, buyers are yes, but they're also not a yes. Something that we want to be mindful is you want to buy when not everyone else is buying. You want to be fearful when others are greedy, and you want to be greedy when others are fearful. This is what Warren Buffett has said. And with that, I end my sharing for all of you today. If you're not too sure how you should go about with your planning, what kind of property you should be choosing, what stack, what layout, and how do you plan your long-term planning, you can reach out to me. I'll be more than ready to help you. See you in my next episode.